Celtics Beat is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
What's up, everyone? Welcome in. Happy Friday, happy weekend, depending on when you are listening to us here on your podcast. And always do rate, review, most importantly, subscribe to the Celtics Beat podcast. We are less than 3 weeks away from the regular season start of Boston Celtics basketball. The quest, the chase for Banner 19, the first of 5 preseason games, is now in the books as the Celtics, we know, we've been talking about it, the ramp up to it. They are off in Abu Dhabi. Again, if you listen to the show, not Dubai, they're in Abu Dhabi and victors by 4 points after a confusing scoring situation at the end of the game. 4-point winners, the Celtics against the Denver Nuggets, which shows you, Denver fans, who would have won that hypothetical championship. We're, of course, chatting about that. Dan Greenberg is here with us, Evan Valenti. I am Adam Kaufman. Greeny, where I need to start, before we even get into this preseason game, which, you know, nice to see the Celtics on the floor. First time, obviously, they're out there playing basketball, not meaningful basketball, but basketball no less. On the okay, well, you can come at me for that. That's fine. On the other side of Banner 18, which is lovely. But I need to know, because I saw a tweet from you yesterday or the day before. I think it was last night. How much Celtics porn have you been watching leading up to seeing these guys on the floor again, huh?
Yeah, I mean, so I had a work in progress list. I mean, this was, people say it doesn't matter, these games don't count. I can't understand that, because I had the same level of anticipation over this game as I did game 1 of the NBA Finals.
I knew you were going to see game 1.
It's how, I mean, I first want to acknowledge that is extremely deranged. It's not normal. You shouldn't behave like that. But I don't know whether it's like every dribble of Summer League through the NBA Finals, like they mean something to me, damn it. So last night I did it all. I went through the whole postseason run. I ran through all the episodes of the All-In behind the scenes series. I've been watching the post-title press conferences like once a week ever since. I just can't stop watching Al Horford's press conference. It just fills my heart with so much joy. So I did the normal 6 to midnight routine. I woke up charged to for lack of a better term, and I was thankful they got the win. It was everything I could have wanted and more.
Some people might have attacked that another way, but Greeny responds to the 6 to midnight first thing in the morning. It says, I got to put on a Celtics game.
It was honestly, I mean, listen, it was a long 109 days. Highlights have sort of filled that void, but there's nothing like the real thing. I think we can all, agree with that. So
I think, Ev, what we can agree on is, first and foremost, because Greeny's wrong. The games don't count, but it is nice to see them out there. But more than anything else, they're healthy. Nobody got hurt. There's no big storyline to come out of this thing. I mean, the biggest things are, again, everyone was available. Everybody looked good in their limited minutes. The starters, nobody played 20 minutes, save for Luke Cornett at his 21 among the guys that started. Naturally, Payton Pritchard was out there for 24 because, Pro-Am P cannot be stopped. He showed up again, leading scorer in this game on the Boston side, 21 points. And we come to expect that from Pritchard whenever his number is called upon. That guy is all guts, all glory, all the time. But it was another look at the likes of Jordan Walsh and watching Mazzulla ball in full effect, and this team putting up, 61 3-pointers in this game, which I think I heard Drew Carter say on the broadcast.
Most ever.
What was it, a franchise record?
We had our first Dick Light stat of the year, which was the first preseason game. And that would be, the Celtics have never taken 60 or more threes in a regular season game or a postseason game in the history of the Celtics. So,
and also not a preseason game either.
I don't know if they even considered. I mean, I'm sure Dick's, if he hasn't figured it out already, is working on it. But I don't know if they even kept stats for certain preseason games in certain eras of basketball. But what I think is interesting is they're going to shoot even more threes probably this year. And it was a great quote. I think it was Pritchard after the game, and some people have highlighted this already. And it was the reason why they shot so many is because they're missing 2 of their interior guys. They're missing KP. They're missing Al Horford. So and those guys shoot threes. Let's also acknowledge that. But the lack of inside presence and the lack of conditioning, and look, these guys are world class athletes, and obviously they're very good at what they do. But even being up to game speed right now on October 4th is pretty nuts. So they're not totally in shape yet. So they can't get to the basket as easy as they normally would because they're just not in shape yet. But the team can shoot a ton of threes. And what's fun to me is I think a lot of guys that are on the periphery of this team know that they could maybe shore up a roster spot if they can show they can hit a couple of threes in a row. So you're looking at Jordan Walsh and J.D. Davidson and Baylor Shireman and Lonnie Walker, guys at the end of the bench that are going to be fighting for spots. That's a way they can make it. Like we used to talk about defense with Brad Stevens. Like this, if you can defend and guard your yard, as they say, you have an easier time getting on the floor with Brad Stevens. With Joe, it's like if you can hit threes, you're going to have a spot because there's going to be plenty of open looks for everybody.
They'll cover you up defensively.
Yeah, I mean defensively, this is a pretty good team all the way around. But if you can't, like Sam Hauser's the 7th guy in their rotation, 8th guy in the rotation, and he's a 40% 3-point shooter. So you got to be really good at shooting threes, and this team is going to lean into it even more. And I love it. Kaufman, I absolutely love it. Mazzulla ball is here to stay, brother.
Greeny, it's been an evolving conversation on this show for years, how the league has changed and evolved to where we are now, where the Celtics are leaders of the pack, but it is not uncommon across the league for teams to be 3-point heavy. That is just the style of play now in today's NBA. I'm a little bit older than you, not dramatically so. You're, old enough to remember, kind of the NBA that we both grew up with, where it didn't look like this. And obviously it started to really, it's kind of casually gotten there, but it really started with Curry and Splash Brothers and those Warriors team sort of sending everything to where we are right now to a heightened degree. Are you, and this is not a question about like a lack of, I've been accused of, old man shaking fist at cloud, not embracing change, all of that. And that's fine. That's fine. Like, I just don't find it. And this is not an attack on the Celtics so much as it is the entire league. But again, the Celtics have kind of become the poster children for it. It's not a really entertaining brand of basketball to me. And I don't mean Mazzulla ball. I just mean the 3, 61 3-point tries in a game. Not that I expect that to be the norm during the regular season, but even 40 to 45, where half or more of your shots are from long distance. I'm just curious how you feel about it as someone that is so in tune with today's NBA.
I mean, I would say this. Let's not glorify what was the clogged toilet Celtics offense of years past. Like, I think we need to remember, the 08 Celtics won finals games like 81-78 or something like that. Like, that's not more entertaining just because they took less threes. And I think even though you guys want to stress that these games don't matter, what today showed was Mazzulla ball, and this approach very much does matter because the Nuggets shot better. They went to the line 10 more times, and they lost because they got severely outshot both in volume and in makes from behind the arc. I think the Celtics were plus 30 attempts, and they made 8 more threes. If that doesn't happen, they lose this game. And I don't necessarily think – I think it all depends, right? Like, what does Joe say all the time? It's not the total of threes you take, it's the type of threes you take. There is nothing boring about beautiful ball movement, making defenses get in rotation, and taking open threes. That's basketball porn. That's the Spurs. That's the Warriors. Though that's what I think everyone wants to achieve. Mm-hmm. What I think people don't like is the isolation, James Harden, Luka, Tatum at times, like the hold the ball, step back, low percentage looks that are boring to watch because everyone's just kind of standing around and watching. But
or conversely, the hurry up and do it with 20 seconds left on the shot clock when you're not moving the ball looking for that opportunity.
Right. But I don't even hate those if they're open. Like if Drew Holiday is open in transition, go ahead, take the open three. That was my belief even when that guy was Marcus Smart, because if it's an open look, I want you to shoot it. But when you have a possession where the ball's touching 3, 4, 5 guys are moving, it's like that is basketball beauty at its core. So I never really understood like, oh, this is so boring. The Celtics shoot so many threes. It's like, are you not watching how they're generating these threes? That's the beauty, but people just see like, oh, they took 40, 50. Like, this is not real basketball. It's like, what do you mean? The ball touched the paint 3 times. They swung it to the weak side. Like, that's all things that I think if done correctly. And when Mazzulla ball is at its highest power, it's arguably the most beautiful basketball you can possibly come up with. And that was true of the Warriors, like you said. It was true of the Spurs. I just think, not everybody plays that way, but they still try to get and match that volume. But I think you'll see it similarly with OKC this year. They were right on pace with the Celtics in terms of 3-point volume, but their main guy in Shea lives in the paint. So it's like they don't really get the same flack, even though their volume was pretty similar because of how they generate it. But I don't know. I just shake my head when people think the Celtics play boring basketball, because it's like, what are we watching? How they're generating it is pure porn. So
we'll also have, Greeny shouts out the Warriors, the Spurs. What's the thing that happens every time that we see one of those 30-second clips or whatever it is floating around social media and the ball movement, like he said, going through the paint 3 times? It's the 86 Celtics, so like that's what we, love to throw it back to more than anything else. The Spurs and Warriors are just the more recent to do it.
Yeah.
And honestly, I really think if the 86 Celtics played in 2024, they would take this amount of threes.
Yeah, Larry would take a kajillion, and he would hit a good amount of them for sure. But, this is again, it's awesome to have basketball back. The 3 of us pre-show, we're just nerding out about how awesome it is to have basketball back. We're thrilled. Sunday morning, we're going to wake up. There's going to be basketball, and it's just going to be great. But I do want to bring it back to the game for just a little bit, because we have some storylines to talk about come out of the game. And I'm curious to see where you guys fall in terms of what's your favorite. Obviously, I'll start with Greeny because he is our guest, Kaufman. I am also curious what where you stand here, because I have my answer for this particular question. But, Greeny, you look at all the things that happened today in the game. Again, Seeds won this game. Pretty awesome. Love to see it. 107-103 the final. I don't know if we ever threw that out there, but I'll throw it out there again just in case. What's the big takeaway besides all the threes? What's the biggest storyline for you come out of the game? Because I have a few I can rattle off in my head, but I am curious to see where you fall on this.
From the starting group, honestly, I didn't even think they played all that great. They lost the Jokic minutes.
The only plus player was Cornette.
Yeah, I think defensively, you could tell they weren't really locked in. Typical early preseason stuff. I thought they were pretty sloppy with the ball. So really the only meaningful takeaway I have from the starting group is Tatum he looked pure on his contested threes. He hit 2 of them. 2 of his 3 were contested. Everyone's freaking out over his jump shot. I think your early takeaway is that's maybe a little ridiculous. You forget he shot 37% last year, and just caught a cold streak. So I thought his jumper looked good. But my bigger takeaway is the second unit guys, right? Jordan Walsh to me looked way more ready in this environment than he did in Vegas, where he definitely wasn't playing to his expected role. You didn't see any of those pull-up threes, threes in transition, trying to do too much offensively. You saw him play defense first, be active, hit some open threes, don't turn the ball over. I thought that stood out to me. Pritchard obviously is ready. He's basically a quasi starter just in terms of his talent level. You never have to worry about him. He looked ready to go and sort of backed up what Horford said about him coming to camp ready. For me, I thought Shireman, nowhere close. Jaden Springer didn't take a leap like I thought we were expecting based on his Vegas performance. So it's really more just it was more what we expected. While the starters didn't play too well, Mazzulla ball saved them at the end of the day because the second unit started hitting some threes, played a little bit more defense, and you didn't have to deal with Jokic defensively. So I don't know. It's I wrote it in a blog. I don't know if it's up yet, but I gave the starters a C- to a C, and then the second unit guys a B- to a B. This was not the Celtics at their ceiling or at their potential, which is why it's always nice to win when you don't play your best. So
I'm curious as to your thoughts, because my thing is a little less about today. It's a little more big picture.
Mine is very also kind of big picture, and it's really just all about Payton Pritchard and how necessarily vital he's going to be to this particular group this season, because I do think that they're going to try and rest guys a little bit differently this year. I would prefer, and I think everybody would, if they didn't put so many miles on Holiday and White and Jaylen and Jason and all that stuff. And Pritchard might be a specialist as you get your way through the playoffs, and he might just be the half court heave guy. Like, I don't know, like nobody's ever done what he did in the playoffs, like ever. It was pretty remarkable. But the one thing that I really liked is that guy's ready to play like right now. You could roll the ball out. It could be game one of the regular season, and he's physically ready to go right now. And the fact that he's so comfortable navigating everything offensively for this team and getting guys involved and hitting shots and just being super confident. Like it's just awesome to see that, he went from asking for a trade 2 years ago, last year, stepping up, and this year just picking up where he left off, and it might be just even better than he was. So as you look at this team, and age is starting to become a factor for certain guys, and rest is becoming a factor for certain guys, his contributions are going to be massive this year. He's going to have an even bigger role than he had last year, in my opinion, and he looks ready for it. And, as they navigate their way through the regular season, and who cares about seeding? I think all three of us are at this point, like, who cares? Get to April, I don't care. I really don't care. This team can go on the road. Come on, man. I
know, but
unbelievable on the road last year.
But now we just saw them overcome their home court playoff demons. I kind of would like to have.
Oh, it's way better. It's way easier. Trust me. And this team, the fact that they're.
Well, I think there's anybody that questions, again, injuries are unpredictable. And we already know Porzingis is out for a period of time, probably half the year when all is said and done. But I don't think anybody looks at this team and questions them having a top 4 seed and home court advantage. If you're talking about home court advantage all the way through the playoffs.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I meant through.
Season, I mean, sure, but again, I don't think I agree with that. But I don't think that's an end all be all. But we've been talking about that on the show for a little bit now. They just whatever they can do to be healthy going into the playoffs, and at that point in time, respond accordingly.
Yeah, it is funny that you mentioned he looks so ready, because I remember, this was in the middle of my deliriousness, early morning, porn session, that I remember he was asked in the All In series, like, how do you, are you nervous ahead of the finals, blah, blah. And he was basically like, I play every single game like it's the NBA finals. And so now to see Pritchard have this type of performance in a very meaningless to you preseason game, it's like, it's true. He
struck a nerve.
He absolutely plays every single minute as if it's the NBA finals. And I think that is just a testament to the mentality of the players that Brad has built this roster with, is like, they're just competitive dogs. Like, it doesn't matter if it's practice, preseason, regular season, playoffs, like the compete level is just so insane that, like, if they had lost this game, Pritchard would have been like up all night, pissed off at himself for a random turnover he had. Like, that's just, and it starts with Mazzulla, and it runs through the best players all the way down to, I think, we hear how competitive all these practices are. It's like, that is what I think makes this team so unique, is like, nobody goes through the motions. And if you even think about going through the motions, Joe Mazzulla will like jujitsu your ass, like, to prevent you from ever having that mentality. So I think today was a good example of Pritchard, of what that looks like.
I like to say it's the killer whale mentality.
Oh, we're going to get to that. No, we're getting to that later. I want a whole segment on that. I will say, Pritchard, I think Pritchard, it was like Danny Ainge's last gift to the Celtics, because I believe that was the last first rounder that they had that year. And I believe Ainge was still at the helm at that particular time. And I remember we all talked about it, like, because I think that was the Neesmith draft too. I think it was Neesmith and then Pritchard later. And I was like, hey, if you just flipped them, works out great. The last gift from Danny Ainge was Pritchard, and he's a dog, man. He is an absolute dog. And I'm
curious though, when you say that you think he's going to take on an even larger role next year, I'm wondering sort of in what context you put that in, because I remember like a year ago at this time, after Brogdon was traded away, Holiday comes in, we knew the guard rotation was going to look a bit different. Like, we were screaming on this show that Pritchard was going to have a larger role. He was going to be more important to the team. He was going to have a better season than Brogdon was going to have this, all these things. And I think largely we were proven right, by the way. Just want to mention that. But putting that aside for a moment, is Celtics beat always first, as we say. But, he's coming off a year that he averaged 10 more minutes per game than he had, prior anyway, in the season prior. Because, going as a rookie, totally different situation. 2021, he averaged 19 minutes a game, but then it dipped under Ime, on Joe year one. It was, 14 down to 13, and then 22 last year. Career high in points, almost 10. Career high in minutes, or pardon me, assists, 3.5. Rebounds at almost 3.5. Steals basically matched a career high. The shooting percent overall from the field was a career high. 3-point, it stepped back a little bit, but the volume was higher. Free throws, I guess, were down a little bit, you could say. But generally speaking, that was a career year for Payton Pritchard. So when you say, I think he's going to be even more important or take on a larger role, this year, what does that look like to you?
I think he's going to score more points. It might the percentages might go down a little bit, just because he's going to ask to score more. I think the playmaking is going to be up. I think the rebounding is going to be up because he's a guy that actually crashes the offensive glass. It's one of my favorite things about Pritchard is oftentimes amongst the trees, he's a 6'1" guy pulling down offensive rebounds, pulling it back out, restarting the offense. I just think he's just much more comfortable within the scheme. As you're in it for a year and playing a certain way, you get more comfortable getting everybody else involved in attacking when you feel like you have an advantage. I think with Pritchard, he has spent an entire year playing in this system. They bring all the same guys back. He knows exactly who he's playing with. He's going to be way more comfortable. I just think everything's going to go up with the exception of maybe percentages. He might not be as efficient, but I just think the comfortability with this guy is going to be unbelievable. And again, if he just, the way he carries himself, I'm just like, no, this guy's like ready to rock and roll. And I think he's ready for a little bit more responsibility. And I think Joe Mazzulla is going to give it to him. I think he's proven that. Whether that manifests in the playoffs, we'll see. Doesn't matter right now. I think the regular season, Pritchard's going to have a really great season. I mean, I would bet right now that he's going to average double figures in scoring this year. I mean, last year he just missed it. I think this year he's going to eclipse that 11, 12, 13 per game. And he's going to be counted on to really run that second unit. The way that Boston staggers their guys, because they have 6 starters essentially, they're able to have a Jay on the floor at all times with a Horford and a White or a Holiday and a KP or a Horford. Like, they're able to stagger everybody. But I do believe that he'll be handed the car keys a little bit more than he was last year, and he'll be way more comfortable with it. And he's just going to facilitate a lot more. I'm really excited for him. I'm again, you give someone an opportunity to see what they do with it. He's going to run with it. And I'm really pumped for him.
Yeah, we don't talk enough about, he's the only Celtic that played 82 games last year. It's like almost hard. You would think that would be Derek White, but he ended up missing, I think, 10 or 11. I think what's interesting when you watch him today, we saw flashes of it last year, but when you think of what are his leap areas, I think what you said about initiating offense, especially with that second unit, he looks so much more comfortable running pick and roll today. His patience is much better. And I think now that Drew and, Derek's on the other, he's about to be on the other side of 30. I think they were right around 32, 33 minutes a game. Pritchard was right around 22, 23. It wouldn't shock me if they go down a minute or two and he goes up a minute or two. So he's living in like that 24 to 25 minute range. And we'll see when he's sharing the court with one of the Jays in that second unit, instead of it being Tatum that initiates all the offense and Pritchard being off ball, it'll be switched. So maybe that can help save the Jays' legs over the course of 82. And they trust Pritchard to be able to create offense aside from just being a catch and shoot spot up shooter. Because really that's it, right? Like, if he can't provide other areas of offense aside from catch and shoot, threes, it makes him hard to be on the floor if his shot isn't going in. But if you can trust that he can generate offense, not turn the ball over, create for others, those are the areas. Like, if he averaged 3 assists, 3.5 assists last year, why can't that be 4.5 this year with an increased, playmaking responsibility? So It's not like he's going to come in like be the Malik Monk 20-point per game off the bench, like 6th man of the year. But I do think he is, the last 2 or 3 years, really grown as a traditional offensive creating point guard who just so happens to have unlimited range and shoot 40%. So it's like if he was 6'6", he'd be a starter on every single team in this league. And I just think his growth is, being that dog defensively and taking that playmaking leap, especially out of pick and roll, whether it's going to be with Cornette or Keita or Tillman, just making sure that they can generate offense in that second unit that isn't 3 dependent. That's what I want to see his growth be.
Quick break from today's show to tell you today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the official daily fantasy sponsor of CLNS Media, and with Prize Picks, you can now up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks in Prize Picks, folks, is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves, the first half is return. Prize Picks keeps your lineup live. And with the NFL, obviously, anybody can get hurt at any time. NBA is coming up. Again, as Celtics fans, we're all sitting here holding our breath. Hopefully, the health of the Celtics remains intact throughout the entire season. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need a win to receive that $50 bonus. You just have to make a play. That's it. And Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Make sure you download the Prize Picks app today. Use that code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. And folks, again, if you don't win, you still get the money. There aren't many opportunities like that. Again, that's CLNS. Get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Prize Picks. Run your game.
So my bigger picture thing, guys, that I feel like we've been kind of teasing on the show for a couple of weeks, but I found myself in watching this game earlier, just thinking about it again. And maybe it's the fact that Jaylen Brown, he'll have a flashy block or an emphatic dunk, and we'll see him with those posters every once in a while. Not that Tatum doesn't do that stuff. He's just a totally different kind of player. And it's Tatum's team. It's a 1A, 1B kind of thing. We talk about that all the time, but these obviously are, together, the stars, the faces, the guys that jointly led this team to a championship, don't win it without the other, all of that stuff. We've kind of wondered aloud, I guess, which one of these guys, for lack of a better way of putting it, has more to prove, if not to the world, to himself, this coming year, who is going to impact change, who's going to take that much bigger a leap, a step forward in the growth of their individuality as players. And you could make the case that between the two, it should be Tatum, right? He's perennially in the MVP conversation. He wasn't finals MVP. He wasn't conference finals MVP. He had yes, he won a gold medal, but he had some level of embarrassment at the Olympics with the multiple DNPs or limited minutes, even in some of the other games that he played versus Brown, obviously, and everything that he went through, where he's snubbed from all NBA and he's, hell bent on being all defensive team. He doesn't get invited to the Olympic roster and even get an opportunity to be a DNP. He's just not even there. He doesn't have the medal. And so each of these guys, they've got the chips on their shoulders, obviously, coming into the year, which, as Mazzulla has kind of talked about, just thrills him. He's all about that stuff. I watched them, though, and maybe it's just this quick reaction, this like, I don't know, the trigger of the return, right? But I feel like it's Brown. And maybe it's, I'm sort of falling into the, man, he comes back and he looks huge and he's on the cover of Time. And there's the, all this stuff that he's a lot more sort of transparent about some of the off-season workouts and work in the pool and all that. So like some of that stuff is a little less showcased in recent years with Tatum than maybe it is with Brown. Tatum used to put all the videos and stuff up. We don't see as much of it anymore. I don't know. I'm rambling. I understand. For all the people out there on YouTube that say I talk too much, it's my show. I can do that. I just think that Brown he's the guy, Greeny and Ev, and I want to know what you guys think. I feel like if either one is bound to take a bigger leap forward this year, I feel like Brown is the one.
It's tough because, like, I don't think we can frame it anymore as, like, what do they have to prove? Because to me, this is what the title ended. It ended all the questions of if they can, will they do? Those are done. Now it's almost a transition of, you know, anything else they do in their Celtics career is basically gravy, right? Like, if we get the exact same version of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum that we just saw last year, we know that's good enough to win a championship. So I think we're always just looking for, like, that's what's next, right? Like, there's areas of their game they can improve, right? Like, Tatum can always work on his ball security. Jaylen can always work on his free throws. But what I think the reaction post-title also showed us is, in the national perception, narrative, whatever you want to call it, it's not going to matter if they repeat as champions, right? Like, this was supposed to be, oh, Tatum and Brown need to show us they can win a title. They need to come through, blah, 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 before we give them their respect. And
don't you remember, Greeny, that Giannis and Dame showed more cohesion in one game than Tatum and Brown had shown in 7 years?
So it's like, then they put up arguably a top 5-6 season in the history of the NBA. They win the title, and even still, there wasn't that acceptance, because I think people are so tied to the Tatum and Brown Celtics of the past, where they came up short in these loud moments, and that just became their moniker. But then last season, they broke through that, and I think people struggle coming to grips with that reality. So it's like, Tatum could have another All-NBA season. He could be more efficient. He's still not going to move up in the MVP list, right? He's going to be in that 4 to 6 range. Jaylen Brown could have another insane year. It wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't make All-NBA again, because that's just what happens. But I think the comfort is knowing, now that they've gotten the title, it's like, I don't have to worry about any of that shit anymore. It's like, just get me to May, and that's when things matter. And we've seen them get over the hump. So it's like, they could have 10 times better seasons, and I think you're still going to hear the same bullshit around both of them, and lack of respect nationally with Team USA, because for whatever reason with those two players, people are so honed in. Like, I feel like they get more flack for the 22 finals loss than they do for the 24 finals win, which makes no sense, but that's just their reality. And I think they're entering their NBA primes and are mature enough to accept that and to say, whatever, you can say whatever you want. We're focused on winning, and we're focused on winning multiples. And that's what we as fans should care about.
I respectfully disagree, Kaufman, with you. I think it's Tatum over Brown.
Doesn't even have to be respectful, by the way.
There's a playmaking element to Tatum that Brown doesn't have, and Brown's gotten way better at it. I'm not saying that he's not. That's not what I'm saying here. But as you might recall, I've argued for point Tatum for like several years now.
Yeah.
And I got it in the playoffs, and it was exactly what I was looking for. I didn't realize that this is the team he would need to unleash that side of him. But there's a playmaking element to Tatum that there's still more to come here. I mean, he had 12, 6, and 5 in 19 minutes. 19 minutes. Yeah. I mean, come on. He can and to go back to the game, make it topical. What Tatum showed me today is, again, this is a guy that's going to be just a box score stat stuffer. And if the 3-point shot is fixed, all the people that complained about, oh, he doesn't average enough points, he can't be nearly as good as Luka. If the 3-point shot comes around, then yeah, he might not score 30 a game, but if he's scoring 29 a game on average with 9 to 10 rebounds a game and like 6 to 7 assists a game, he's just going to take another level. He's going to take another jump up, because the two-way play is remarkable. And Brown has become.
Wait, first, let me just build off that. Let me ask you something.
Sure.
So I largely agree with all of that. Like for all the people, and I'm sure if if you're listening, watching, you like maybe you were one of them, you remember who you are, but I know the three of us weren't in this category. For all the people that were out there that were bitching about Tatum during points of the playoffs, saying like, when is he gonna whatever get more selfish? I don't know. Like what we saw from Tatum, and I know you agree with this, Ev, that postseason version of Tatum, other than having trouble with his shot, I'm just talking about stylistically the way he played. That was
That's it. That's the Mona Lisa.
That's the perfect Jason Tatum. Yeah. That is the exact Jason Tatum that I want to exist for the rest of his career, no exception. That's the guy. That is the guy. And so when you say that, Ev, I agree with everything you just said. I think he can even unlock another version of that where he does that much better. But I guess where I'm coming from, and maybe in some ways we're saying the same thing. This is how I shape the narrative back to me. Is it possible that the way he does that and does it so effing well and so subtly in some ways that it actually unlocks or opens up Jaylen Brown for those kind of louder performances, that it becomes more obvious with Brown than it does with Tatum?
I mean, it's certainly possible. But one of the things that drove me crazy about the offseason is people continuing to downplay how unbelievably special Jason Tatum was during the playoffs. And I just don't understand why people continue to not see the forest through the trees, so to speak, right? Like, this is a guy that played center on defense and point guard on offense. And I can name you a handful of guys that could do that NBA history. I mean, there's just not a lot of them. And the fact that he's only 26 is insane because he's just going to keep getting better at these things. He's going to take little small increments up. He's going to become more efficient. He's going to be better at it's for me. Yeah. The first team all NBA stuff is unbelievable. And again, it gives you a great snapshot of he's been a top 5 player in the league the past 3 years in a row. But I don't think in the court of public opinion, people think he's a top 5 player. And it drives me absolutely bananas because, again, we're sickos. We watch every Celtics game. So we have a different perspective than the average lay fan, right? Where you see Anthony Edwards' highlights and he's dunking over cars or whatever. He's amazing. But there's so much more that Ant needs to do to get on the level of the guys that are in front of him. And oftentimes, if you talk to a random NBA fan, they think Anthony Edwards is better than Tatum. And it's like, what planet am I on? Right. With Embiid, right? People love Embiid.
Because they watch Hustle.
I am not. Yeah. Right. I've been one of the biggest, again, I love watching him play, but I just don't think you can win with a guy like that. And it's the proof's in the pudding at this point. I think Jason Tatum is better than Joel Embiid. And I will keep saying that because Tatum wins the playoffs and Embiid does not.
Right.
Wins and how you impact winning, to me, is the most crucial stat. And in my opinion, Jason Tatum impacts win. And this is like such a stupid argument that we're having. It's like, this is like no other team is having this argument. Like, which one of our young superstars, you guys, what do you think is but in my opinion, like,
we're sitting here trying to like rank our children, right?
I know,
like,
right? It's
who's your favorite kid? Well, this one does really well at school. This one's the better athlete.
Right. I just think Tatum, the way Tatum impacts winning is significantly you can see it more than you can with Brown. And this is not a shot at Jaylen Brown either. Jaylen is awesome. Again, we saw peak Jaylen last year, and it's possible we might eclipse that this year. But all the stuff that Tatum is in charge of and how he impacts winning games on both ends of the floor, to me, is still underrated nationally in this league, and it drives me crazy. And I think with the success of last year, and if he can, because everybody cares about scoring for some reason, if he can find a way to just be a little bit better at shooting, maybe the national narrative will catch up to the way that the three of us feel about how good Jason Tatum is. The guys, there are not that many guys in the NBA in front of him. People will throw you Jokic, fine. People will say Shea. I'm cool with that. You want to throw Giannis? Totally fine. That's where I stop because of the defensive stuff. I know Luka's amazing on offense, and he's a one-of-one type of player. But defense to me matters. And I think it matters to you guys too. And that's where, like, when you get to the fourth best player in the league, I have Tatum and Luka side by side, and I show a little bit of my bias when I rank Tatum slightly higher. But I with an incredible year from Tatum, I think he could just cement himself in that category, and we won't have to talk about it like this anymore.
Greeny, join the pod. What do you think?
Well, so it's, I look at it, it's a tough topic because, in my opinion, there's two different Jason Tatums. There's regular season Jason Tatum and there's playoff Jason Tatum. When you look at other superstars in the league, they usually have the same role and responsibility and production in both the regular season and the playoffs, right? Like the Wolves use Anthony Edwards the same way in the regular season as they do in the postseason. Luka has the same role and responsibility in the regular season as the postseason. But with Tatum, and based on how the Celtics are structured, you don't see that, right? Like he's a legitimate 30, 10, and 6 guy once you get to the playoffs, because suddenly his rebounding is way more important. He now becomes the primary point forward offense initiator, so his playmaking numbers are higher. So I don't think we'll ever see, from a raw production standpoint, Tatum have the numbers like we saw. I mean, he averaged like 32, 10, and 6 against Cleveland. Another 10 rebounds, with double-digit assists in the finals for a handful of the games. That's not what the regular season Celtics need from him over the course of 82 games. And I think that's where the disconnect comes. Is he a top 5 guy, top 3 guy? Because, his regular season numbers are great. 25, 26 a game, 8 assists, 3, 4, 5 assists. Like those are all NBA numbers, but they're not MVP numbers when you have these high usage players who have the ball all the time. But once we flip to the playoffs, he is every bit as dominant as any MVP player with the production to match. So for us, it's like, okay, during the regular season, let's work on your efficiency. Let's keep your load relatively light. Let's not, burn you out. We know the defense is going to be there. But then once we flip to the playoffs, he checks the box of every all-time postseason performer that you could potentially want from an MVP. Like he's asked to guard centers. He's your leading rebounder. He led the team in points, rebounds, and assists, like in every round. You can't physically do more for your team than what Jason Tatum just accomplished. But I think because maybe he's shooting 41% and he goes on a shooting slump, people, again, they have this issue and struggle of coming to grips with the Celtics being as good as we've all said they've been this whole year. And now that he's gotten over the hump, it's like, well, now field goal percentage is the most important thing in a playoff series. Since when, right? Like, since when has that ever been a thing? But with Tatum, it is. And I just think because he knows and the team uses him in a way that elevates his responsibility, like he's the sun in the Celtics system that everything else orbits around. Like if you were to give Jaylen Brown Tatum's role and responsibility, the Celtics would not be as good. That's not what his strengths play to. With Tatum, you could ask him to play any style, guard any position, play any way. Like you can adapt him to fit that mold. And that's what makes him extremely, extremely unique. And it's why the Celtics have the most wins in the NBA since he joined the team. Like that's not an accident. That, their success isn't just by chance. He is the guy that he is the main cog of the machine, right? Like we saw what happened when he got hurt in Game 7 against Miami. Everything crumbled. We've seen them win playoff games with Tatum and not have other guys. They didn't win many of them, but they won at least one of them. So it's like, I just think because his games are so different and people see more of the 82, that's what they think of him as opposed to understanding that like you're getting a top 5 player for 82 games. And then you're getting a guy that's going to be the best player on the floor, regardless of who's on it, for the 16 wins that matter. Not every MVP candidate can say that. And I think that's what makes the team so good.
And we're powered by Game Time. Football season It's here. Don't let people tell you football season's coming because listen, the college football season, that is, I mean, literally days away. And the NFL season, that is beginning September 5th. It is right around the corner. The time to start planning is coming up. The season with our friends over at Game Time, a great opportunity to get out to games, obviously. Game Time is a new feature. It is called Game Time Picks. Makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams, like the Patriots, for instance, play live so easy. So incredibly easy, Ev. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff, okay? Shows you incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. There's so many other places that you get bogged down. Game Time, it just makes things so easy.
Yeah, my favorite part, I was scrolling through it the other day, and I was like, this is what's really great is sometimes you have a significant other at home, Adam. Some of us do as well. And sometimes you look at your significant other and say, what do you want to do today? Because I don't know. What do you want to do today? Well, guess what? Game Time has something for you. You can be a little spontaneous. Get a little inspiration from Game Time. Let them help you with their This Weekend tab. Scroll through and find some events that are, around your area. They'll give you the price of everything. You can grab your tickets, have them right on your phone out of the house. It only takes a few minutes for you to do so, and curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater. All of it is shown up front. No surprise fees at checkouts, which is my least favorite thing about buying tickets anywhere. And then you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, Kaufman. It's just way easier.
Take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Use Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code CLNS. Again, that is code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code. It is CLNS, $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. What time is it? Game time. Let's get back to the show. Honest question, and this to both of you, by all means, like if the answer is yes, don't shy away from it. As time has gone on, maybe I'm just busy, but I don't even think that's it. I think that would be a weird excuse. I think it's just the interest, quite frankly. I consume less and less national and local coverage of the Celtics. And when I say that, I don't mean press conferences or reading articles about the team. I mean, like the talking heads, right? Local radio, local TV, national, the Stephen A's of the world, like Perk, like whoever. Like I'll see crap on social media and see what goes viral, and I'll notice it. But I'm not like I'm even Simmons. Like I'm just not consuming this stuff the way that I'm guessing the two of you are. I know Ev is, and I'm guessing you are as well, Greeny. So what we're talking about here, like, is this a dumb topic? I mean, is this just something that I am interested in, that I care about, that I think about? Is this stupid? Or is this something that goes through other Celtics fans' heads?
I don't think you're stupid, right? I think it is. I think it's legitimate to be like, all right, based off a season of disrespect, who's going to come back with more of a vengeance and stuff like that? But I think now that we've gone through hell and we've reached the top of the mountain, I think the days of the Tatum versus Brown debates, those are dead. Those are deader than dead. Now it's like, I think this is going to be a really interesting year because we've never had a season where they've accomplished what we all wanted them to accomplish, right? The pressure to win is gone. The uncertainty, can they play this style and win? Is Mazzulla the guy? Do Tatum and Brown work? Like, those are all gone. So I think it's going to take people maybe a little while to come up with, a new set of things to doubt because, did people have those debates during the Warriors dynasty? I don't know. Like, I wasn't in Golden State, but it's like at some point it's okay to just say, after 16 years of infighting and pitting them against each other, maybe it could be nice to just enjoy the ride and be like, holy shit, this is the most dominant team in the sport. And they're set up for success for a long time. So I think it's going to take, like, we're so conditioned to view them in a certain way where this is all new to everybody, right? Like, I've never entered a season with less stress than I have this year. Because, like, while it would be awesome if they went back to back, like, if they don't, whatever, I've already seen them do it, and I know they can do it. So maybe they just got a bad break. Who knows? Whereas if they had come up short again last year, think of the pressure and how uneasy we would all feel with Porzingis now being hurt, with Mazzulla.
I'm not even certain Jaylen Brown would still be on the roster.
That's what I'm saying. So it's like we've never entered a year where it's like we don't have to worry about Tatum and Brown. We don't have to worry about the coach or the system. Like the only thing we have to worry about is health, right? Like, did you guys see Jaylen on the Hot Ones? They said the Celtics will repeat if, and he said if we stay healthy. That's literally the only thing we have to worry about, debate, and we can't even control that. So it's like, I don't know. I'm excited just for like a stress-free year of just, because last year they crushed everyone and it was awesome. But you also had that underlying fear of like, oh, Christ. Like, what if they're the only team in NBA history to do what they've done and not win the title? Well, then they did. So now it's like we can just go belt to ass and enjoy it and not have to have that underlying uncertainty.
Yeah. I mean, I in terms of the national stuff, I think I don't listen to a lot of talking heads. I try to consume smart people and, talking about things. And unfortunately, now that JJ's gone and coaching the Lakers, that's one asset that we don't have anymore, because I did enjoy JJ's pod. But, if you listen to the people that are smart about things, and I would consider JJ one of them, Tim Legler another one. Like, Simmons has great guests on, and Simmons has great opinions himself.
Zach Lowe eventually again.
Yeah. So like, a lot of the people that really dive deep into things know how good this team is. And I'm like with Greeny, like this is going to be the most enjoyable season probably of my life. Like this is going to be so great. And again, to go back to last season, it was none of this matters. None of the regular season. And I was like, this definitely matters. Like
very much matters.
It's just crazy to me that we're just going to poo-poo literally everything they're doing because we'll see what happens in the playoffs. Now, again, as Greeny said, we don't have to worry about that anymore. And all I have to do now, Kaufman, is worry about, the killer whale offense as they attack seals all over the place. And I think my favorite thing that has come out the past couple of days is like, who was the biggest seal in the NBA for the Celtics this year? Who did they pick out? Who did they hunt the most on offense? And that just gets me back to Mazzulla too, where I'm just like, that guy's my favorite maniac of all time. Like the fact that he's looking at soccer and the killer whale, their feeding habits. Like this is a guy that's just next level. I love everything about this team. I love everything that's come out about this team the past couple of days, and today's game, Friday's game, just emphasized everything. This is going to be a fun year, and I'm thrilled we're getting started, boys. It's going to be a good time.
But I will say, we should all set the expectation. Like last year's Celtics essentially touched God. Like we may not see them to the level that we saw last year.
Possible. I think it's certainly possible they could eclipse it. But
it is, but like I don't think they're going to have more 40
virtually nothing went wrong last year.
Right. Like that's, I think, if you were to
no 3-game losing streak the entire season. They only lost 2 games in a row. Like
no, like major injury. Like Porzingis missed time, but he came back.
Like 12-2 on back-to-backs with no Al Horford. No more than 2 losses in a row. Most 30, 40,
playoffs
50.
Were never stressful.
Like
steamrolled.
The best.
Like they'll be dominant, right? Healthy. But I just think what we saw, you go your entire life and never see statistically a season like what they just accomplished, like in the history of the NBA. So I think, that's important off the jump. But everything else in terms of just like how they stack up compared to the rest of the league, there's still a huge gap. No matter what anybody else did this summer, okay, you went from a 14-game lead to a 9-game lead. Like that's still a freaking Grand Canyon, size difference. So I'm interested to see, barring health, it doesn't sound like they're going to be complacent, but what happens if their owner's successful? Like they were 31-6 or something crazy without Porzingis. What if that's 23-13 or something? Like how do they handle that? Now, they very well may show up and be just as dominant, and we are truly witnessing like a top 3 team of all time. That's all possible. But I just think it's more going to be, my interest is if they aren't as historic and they're not up by 20 in the first quarter of every game they play, what's the adjustment going to be? Like how is their mentality going to shift? And everything we've seen and heard from them says it'll be fine and there's no reason to worry. But if I were to come up with a list of concerns, given how stacked they are, it's things won't go as smoothly as it did last year. And, now with this added motivation of them being the champs and teams giving them their best shot, no two seasons are ever alike. And I just think we're very quick to assume that it will be. And maybe this is just my PTSD of Celtics seasons past, but I'm just, the Celtics were rolling until KG went up for an alley-oop in Utah, and then it ruined their season. So, you're always one of those moments away from things being drastically different. But other than that, they're going to be a wagon.
Reading, before we wrap this show up, and I do want to wrap it up in a couple minutes because we've been going for a little while here. People have attention spans and you have a life that we want to let you get back to here, obviously. The Celtics open up their season on October 22nd at home, their garden, versus the team from the other garden, the New York Knicks, the new look New York Knicks, who now have Karl Anthony Towns. We were talking about it because it was right after the trade with Adam Himmelsbach last week. Want your impressions of what New York is going to look like, because I had just the ultimate respect for that team last year, especially had they been healthy, which, just decimated by injury after injury as that season went along in the playoffs. That ultimately was their downfall against the Pacers. But now they've changed things up a bit. There's no Randall, though he had trouble staying on the floor. There's no DiVincenzo. The Villanova boys thing is taking a hit. And you have Towns, who's arguably a really good fit, and a guy who's, I'm always weary of what sort of the year one grass is always greener, new scenery narrative situations. And so he's going to be looking to prove something to people, obviously. What does this look like? Are the Knicks unquestionably to you the biggest threat in the East?
No, I still respect a healthy Giannis more than any other, adversary in the East. I just, he's done it. We've seen it. His motor is insane. So if he's healthy, then, they're still a formidable opponent. With the Knicks, it's interesting because offensively, I think everyone can, we all see the spacing advantage. The three-point shooting is going to help. It's going to help create more ways for Brunson to get into the paint, where he's probably the most effective paint scorer since 2016 Isaiah. He just doesn't matter whether it's White or Holiday, he still got off against them and went for 30 plus. So with added spacing, I think that's really going to help them. But when I think of what made playing the Knicks so tough, it's not stopping Brunson offensively. It's their toughness and their offensive rebounding. And they lose Hartenstein, who was an insane offensive rebounder. They lose DiVincenzo, who was just a tough, hard-nosed player. And I think for them, it's going to be the question of, is this going to be a season where chemistry ends up being more important than talent? I think we all remember the 2018-19 Celtics that were loaded with talent, but their chemistry wasn't it. Just did not give you what you needed to win at a high level. On the flip side, we now saw this Celtics team with elite talent and elite chemistry and what that did for them. So I worry that they may be harder to stop defensively, because now you have to worry about one of the best shooting big men and a legit low post scoring threat in Towns. But defensively, I now see two guys that you can attack, right? What makes the Celtics so good, and if you're going to beat them 4 out of 7 times, you have to find a way to attack a defensive lineup that has 0 holes. Pick a name of who you want to attack on the Celtics defensively. You can't. Whereas with the Knicks, you now have to hide Brunson and you have to hide Towns. Well, why wouldn't I just put both of them in pick and rolls until they prove they can stop it? And the playoffs, when things slow down, are all about, can you present a challenge that your opponent cannot solve? And it's not a strategy or a system thing. Jaylen Brunson is 5'10", 5'9". That's never going to change. It's the same issues we see with Payton Pritchard. He's in you defensively and he's a dog, but he's 5'8", 5'9". You're just going to shoot over him. So if I think of in a playoff series, there's more ways to attack the Knicks than there was pre-trade. And then you have to factor in all the chemistry issues of, did they just get rid of their toughness, their energy, their guts, their grit, the things that made them they're kind of like the Bridgie Celtics, where they were good and they tried hard as shit for 48 minutes over 82 games, And you can win 50 games like that during the regular season. But in a playoff series, what happened? When it came time to win and get over the hump, talent trumps all. And I just don't know if they still have the talent.
I want it on the record. Amit, clip it for June. I'm not worried about the Bucks at all. I have entered year after year with the Bucks being the number one fear for me in the Eastern Conference. Overall, it's been Denver, but in the East, specifically the Bucks. Talked about it a little bit with Himmelsbach last week. No, I'm not. It's the Knicks. Even to some degree, it's the Sixers, depending on how it looks with Paul George there. I have my skepticism of Embiid, which is well documented on this show. I'm not worried about the Bucks. Love and respect Giannis, really do. I just don't think he and Dame are a good fit. I think they're two alphas that can't necessarily coexist, and I certainly don't believe in Doc in guiding that ship to the promised land. And Middleton's getting old. I don't like it.
Going to play to start the year, which is I think the bigger issue here. But to Greeny's point, Giannis 50 burger is always on.
I have to respect it. If you have a Larry, I have to respect you by default. If you have a Larry, and he's got one, so
he's as good as it gets. And I'm with Greeny a little bit on that. Like I don't care what the roster looks like. He's still capable of going for 50 every game. And the way he gets officiated is like torture. So I'll never stop fearing Giannis. I will never stop fearing that deer. No question.
All right, we're going to step aside and let everyone get back to whatever you're doing with your day, your night, your morning, whenever you are listening to us. We greatly appreciate it. Again, search the Celtics Beat podcast wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Pandora, you name it. We are there. We thank you very much. Obviously, the 1-0 preseason 1-0 Celtics get back at it Sunday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern. One more with the Denver Nuggets on NBA TV or NBC Sports Boston from Abu Dhabi. And then it's stateside for three more beginning October 12th against the Sixers, back-to-back with the Raptors, and then October 22nd at TD Garden. They're home for now until a new owner decides to move them out to the suburbs to face the New York Knicks. For Evan Valenti, I'm Adam Kaufman. Of course, Dan Greenberg, Barstool Sports, Barstool Greeny joining us. Greeny, thanks so much, bud. We'll talk again soon.
Bye, guys.
It's been Celtics Beat. Back to the Seas porn.